And when I do, now I can respond from a really healthy place,
right,
rather than being in reaction mode. So none of this is about being perfect. It really is just being in a place of our heart where we can be guided from a very different place, where we can make different choices that start to feel more aligned, so that we feel we're gaining some traction in life, that we're feeling like it is self-acceptance. It really is. Like when we can stop judging ourselves and making the mistakes in our life mean something negative about us, that is self-acceptance. And that is self-love. So self-love is not about being perfect at all. It's about knowing we do make mistakes. And trust me, I mean, I've got all of mine. It's doing the shadow work. I mean, shadow work is it's about bringing the light of consciousness to the places where we've cut off, the places that are not acceptable in us, and really honoring and accepting all of it and loving all of it. That's ultimately the ultimate self-love, is seeing all our flaws, all our shortcomings, all the errors in our ways, and loving all of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying is really important. I think the fact, there's that inner child aspect of all of us that runs the show most of the time, that I think you could label as the shadow. Right? And I was listening to this guy talk a while back, and he was referring to the inner child as being a real badass. Because the longer that you put off doing your inner child work, the more that inner child is going to start screaming and yelling and causing more and more problems, to the point where everything in your life will come to a crashing halt, basically, so that it gets your attention. And once it gets your attention, then you can start doing the shadow work that will then let go of the judgment of yourself, and I'm not this, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, whatever it is. So, I think that the shadow aspect of anything is the key, and it's the one that gets the most, it gets glossed over more often than not.
Yeah. And that's, it's one of the great barriers, is that people don't want to look because we have so much judgment about ourselves, right? I mean, talking about the separation and the conditioning and programming again, is that, growing up, we're conditioned and we're taught that, if you behave in these ways, then you'll be acceptable, that you'll fit in and you'll get approval and you'll get love. But there's a part of me that doesn't really, a very natural part of me that is kind of greedy and is selfish and is, wants other things, and I want to behave in different ways, and I want to be a badass sometimes, and that all of it is acceptable, and there's nothing wrong with any of it. Some of it's going to cause. I mean, if we could look at, I really learned to look at it like some of it is low consciousness behaviors and things, and some of it is higher consciousness. But instead of looking at it as good or bad, and making a judgment about it in that way. And if we could just take a look at, and it's about bringing the stuff we've hidden about ourselves, and the stuff we don't want anyone else to know, and the things we feel shame about, and the things we feel guilt about, and the things that we're hiding from ourselves and from others, bringing that forth and saying, yeah, these are things that were part of my life, and this is part of who I am, and I can love and accept that. I mean, we're far less likely to act it out again when we really own it and love it than we are when we're trying to hide it. It starts running us, right?
Yeah. Right. I think too, as you're talking, the thing that popped into my head is like, imagine just like taking this kid, right, and dumping all of the things that we've done, that have been dumped on us, on this kid, and keep them locked in a closet, right, and tell them how bad they are, how stupid they are, how unworthy they are. All of this, all the messages that we get. Can you imagine, like, you'd be like put in jail for like the next 1,000 years for child abuse? Exactly.
Oh, we would never let anyone treat us the way we treat ourselves.
Right.
We wouldn't tolerate it for a minute. The other thing too, every single one of my clients, and I will say this without exception, and I've been doing this work for over 20 years now, there isn't a person that I've met that doesn't have some story, like at the root of their, whatever their challenges they're facing in their life, is some belief about themselves that I'm not good enough, that I'm not valuable enough, I'm not smart enough, I don't have enough. There's something about not enough. And it's, their worth is in question with that belief. And then I'll ask them, well, what did you do to make that made you not good enough? And they'll kind of sit and think about it. And then I'll say, well, how long have you been feeling like that? Is it recent? And they'll say, no. And they'll sit there and think, and then they'll know, I've felt like this my whole life. Like, yep, that's true. Where did it start? And it's like, well, do you remember when you were in kindergarten? And they'll go, yeah, I remember it early in school. It was there. That feeling was there. And I was like, okay. So what I do is I'll say, well, let's just imagine for a moment. I'll just invite everybody to do it. It's just imagine a whole field full of little children, little, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old children. And they're all sitting there quietly looking at you. You're walking around, taking in their faces and their expressions. And I want you to go, like there's hundreds of them. And I want you to go and pick every single one who's not worthy or not good enough. How many did you get?
Just Roger.
Just Roger? Poor Roger.
He said he could take it.
Really?
It's completely ridiculous, right? Would you ever look at any little child and say you're not good enough and you're not? I mean, we all pick the message up somewhere, right? But as it started when we were very young, and we're still holding on. We're still operating from that belief that there's something inherently wrong with me, and I'm not good enough, or I'm not valuable enough, and we're still operating with it. We haven't questioned it. We didn't question where it came from, or could it be true? And there's not a little child on this planet that's not good enough or worthy enough. It's just not true. When we look at little children, we would know in a minute as an adult that story is just not true. But as adults, we still believe it's true. We're still operating with a belief somewhere that there's something wrong with us.
Well, that's an interesting exercise, though, because I could also say I've never met an adult who's not worthy enough or good enough.
That's right.
It's really as adult behaviors that we are most likely to project that onto each other, right? If you lined up the same 100 people, I don't know if we could all leap to the point of compassion to really and truly say, yep, they're all great. Even the one with the crack pipe. When he puts it down, he's awesome.
Exactly.
That was what I was going to ask, is what if we put 100 adults in the same field,
right? And
ask, well, okay, then let's make the child choose, because is the child going to choose who's worthy or not worthy? Probably not. But if you put an adult out there to choose, then those things like the crack pipe, or their hair's too long, or they're fat, they're skinny, they're black, they're white, they're pink, whatever, those kinds of things start coming into play based on the conditioning of that person's life. But none of that is true at all. I mean, everybody is worthy.
Exactly. And here's the interesting point about is that the more I love and accept myself, the more likely I am to look out and go, yep, every single one of them is awesome and they're worth it.
I know. The less you participate with the world as if I am a victim, the fewer true victims I see.
Yeah. So the things that we don't like about ourselves, we will see in others, and we'll just go, well, yeah, they're all worth it except for that one. Because they're displaying something I don't like about me, right? So,
or they're a murderer, or they've been in jail, or
we can't. There isn't. I mean, that's not a judgment call, but it is also important to have discernment. I mean, to not expect a crocodile to not be a crocodile. I may say, I may still decide, listen, I get you have a crack pipe, and I don't think you need to express yourself this way if you should choose to do it differently. But you are the animal that you are. And therefore, my respect for myself and self-love says, I don't have to judge you, but I probably don't want to hand you my wallet.
No, that's right. Exactly.
Or put you in the same room with my children.
Right.
Possibly. Right.
Well, exactly. That's right. But you can still see, it's interesting we're saying that, because I just spent 2 years teaching yoga at an addiction treatment center. And, and every single day when I went in there and I sat, and they're most of them are real in a place of deep shame and self-hatred. And I could see in them, because I would look at them, but I wouldn't see their addiction. I would look at the part of them that is healthy and whole and lovable. And I would speak to that and call it out, and they would get it. And I mean, it was kind of hard for them to get it sometimes, but I would see it in their faces. Their faces would light up. So And that, you know, it doesn't matter how far away from ourselves, it doesn't matter. I mean, maybe at the extreme is, you know, a drug addiction or a really intense addiction. They can still connect in 1 second with their authentic self and begin the process of finding their way back to health and wholeness.
Yeah.
It's there. It's like, it's not, it doesn't matter. Like I remember at the end of a class one time leading a meditation where I invited them to connect with that part of them. And I told them it's still there. Like the part of you that, you know, is creative and intelligent and strong and beautiful. And it's still there. And I know a lot of times you would see them crying, like they're moved to tears because there's some recognition that it is there. And then I remember one time coming out of the meditation and this one man, he just put his head down. He said, he goes, those were really nice words and I'd like to believe it, but I'm just not there right now. He's like, I've just hurt too many people and made too many mistakes. And I know they feel that. And that might even be true, but I think you're far more likely to heal if you really connect with that part of you that is still whole and complete. If you can really get that, I think that you can even go back and make amends and be more effective at bringing things back into balance again if you're operating from a place of self-love to start with, rather than thinking, I actually have to go and fix all of this and make everything better before I deserve to have love and belonging.
Right.
Right.
And, you know, to that, in that same process, you know, through recovery through addiction, it's really, it's always true, but that's a great example of how it honestly takes other human beings who know what we're feeling and have been where we are to say, no, you know what, you still have worth. It's almost impossible to get through that level of the shame, guilt, no matter where it comes from, whether it comes from a completely arbitrary religious system who's taken all my behavior and framed it that way, or whether I've actually transgressed against others. Other people who have been where I am and have, in fact, moved through it to the point of understanding that we all still have worth. We have to mirror it for one another. And so, you know, to that end, I think really facing this down, and facing it down, I guess, is a harsh term, but, you know, embodying it and doing the work of just being willing to say, I'm willing to ask, you know, does this in fact make me unlovable? And raising it up, you know, to a higher energy inside of myself while knowing I can't assure myself of the answer. You know, traditionally, I know what the answer is, but not in the moment. Right? We're always confronting that place that thinks, oh no, for sure this time. Oh geez, now I've been revealed to be this, and it's not gonna. I've gotten as far as I'm going.
Yeah.
Well, a part of that too is because we tend to judge ourselves and others based on what we do, as opposed to who we be. And I always try to remind people that you're a human being, not a human doing. Your intrinsic value isn't based on what you're doing in the world. It's who you really are. And who there's that divine piece of every person on this planet that is the truth, not the things that they've done, because everybody in a moment can make a wrong decision or be in the wrong place at the wrong time, or, you know, it's just, we have to get back to that intrinsic value, that there isn't something you have to do that makes you good.
But hang on, because, well, that's true, Janet. But as Michelle pointed out, and I think we would all agree, the truth of this is that personal accountability piece. I have to bring my actions into alignment with my self-love. So just sitting, you know, how many other people are out there who are claiming or feeling self-love, but they haven't begun to back it up with behavior toward themselves or others that's consistent with that. So we have the cognitive dissonance where, you know, to some extent, it's not that what we do is what we are, but we need this to be in practice. This is not a thought or even a feeling. It is about actions toward ourselves in the world, because that's what creates the path, the relationship, the persona, the ripple effect outside of us.
Yeah. And acknowledging too, even, you know, I think one of the greatest challenges that I see with people when they come, there's things going on in their life that there's the situations that are going on, and then there's the story that we make up about the situations that are going on. You know, so if it's something, even if it's something that we did that we don't feel good about, people will say, well, you know, I did this and, you know, it hurt somebody else, or it created this problem. And, you know, they make up some story. They make it mean something about them. I'm a failure. I'm not good enough. We've got a story. And if we can, like, I often ask people, like, okay, let's just give me the facts. So what are the facts? The facts are you behaved in this way and you don't feel good about it. And the facts are that maybe it caused some problem for somebody else. And here's, so we write down what the facts are. And then I say, okay, would drop all the judgment about it and just look at it. And now what do you need to do? And from that place, as soon as they drop all the judgment and all the story, they are connected with their deeper inner knowing, and they know exactly what they need to do. So now you can actually take action and bring it right, make it right, go make amends, correct it. But when we're in a place of self-judgment, and like people will say to me, if I drop all the guilt and I stop judging myself, like that's the one that people have a really tough time with. I'll say, well, just drop all the judgment. They'll say, but if I don't judge myself, then I won't behave any better, right? And it's like, okay, is the judgment actually helping? Did it help you to change this thing? And they're just like, no, I'm actually stuck in it. Like, right. So the judgment, the judgment is not useful. I mean, it's useful for us to see that our behavior may be out of alignment. But beyond that, it's like, now just bring it back into alignment. But we judge ourselves, we beat ourselves up, we feel guilt, we feel shame, and that causes us to stay stuck. And then we get stuck in this self-hatred. But when we can drop all the judgment and just see the truth about it, then there's an opportunity for us to do something different and to come back into alignment and feel good about who we are and what we're doing.
So it's just an awareness of what we did. And if you could stay neutral to it and not attach to it, then you can observe it and be aware of it the next time that opportunity presents itself.
Right.
So I have a question. Besides judgment, what other barriers are there to self-love?
Well, fear, is a big one, right? So, self-love in the way that we're talking about it here today is that, the acknowledgement of a connection with something greater than myself, first of all, and allowing that to move through me and inform my thoughts, my decisions, my actions. And if I'm, if the moment I'm in, my intuition is informing me to step out of my comfort zone and do something different, and if we really are aligned, it will. If I get into fear, and you probably will feel fear, but if you contract with the fear, then that's going to act as a barrier, because you will just go right back into your comfort zone and operate from your self-image again. So it's fear of the unknown, it's fear of rejection, and fear of loneliness. Those are three of the big fears. So people, what's that?
Can you repeat those?
Yeah. So one is fear of the unknown. The other one is fear of rejection. And the third one is fear of loneliness. Okay. Fear of being alone, right? So, a lot of people, it's that one always really kind of surprised me, the fear of being alone. Because I found that a lot of people that I was doing work with, once they started to peel the layers of, especially with addictions and eating disorders of any kind, I was finding this, where people, once they peeled back the layers and got to it, they right at the root of it, they said, I feel really lonely. And I'm surrounded by people. I have a big family, I have friends around me, and I feel very alone. And, and there's this fear about being alone. There's this fear about being rejected and a fear about, being alone. But a lot of people are alone even when they're surrounded by people, because no one sees them. Because we're not being authentic. We're not letting people see the real us. We're not being vulnerable and real and honest enough to really connect with and let people in, so we feel alone. So our fear, and then we surround ourselves by people, or we do people-pleasing things to get people to like us and get people to, acknowledge us or approve of us. So that causes us to behave in ways that are not consistent with our most authentic self.